Hello there, Internet. How are you today? Today is Monday. It is the day before the Wisconsin primary. This is just a hot mess, isn't it? It's a hot mess. So there's a couple of things that have happened recently. Over the weekend, Joe Rogan said that he would rather vote for Donald Trump than Biden, which, to be honest, didn't surprise me.
All men and women created by you know the thing.
Stop. Pause. You can't be president.
What?
Stop. Pause. Pause. Listen, we can't play any games here, folks. This is a really old man who can't talk. Like, this is not a joke. Like that right now. You know the thing? Play that again. Play that again. This should get you into a mental hospital.
Right.
We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. And so, folks, if you're interested, join me.
Look, we all mess up a line here and
He
there.
seems like a remote control with a shitty battery. You know that one where you're like, it's kind of getting the volume, but not quite.
Yeah.
It kind of changes the channels, but you got to move it around. Bro, he's got so little juice left in the tank.
I know.
Donald Trump will chew him up unless he gets a good doctor.
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what. No matter what. We know what has to be done. We know you have to...
would reassess the recommended period.
Yeah, see, he doesn't know what he's talking about when he's talking. And this is not like this. I'm looking at this like a medical condition.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the
He
thing.
had 3 strokes while he was saying that.
I don't believe that he voted for Hillary Clinton back in 2016, but it's super controversial because earlier he had said that he was planning on voting for Bernie Sanders, and now a bunch of people want Bernie Sanders to apologize for ever, acknowledging the fact that Joe Rogan had endorsed him. It makes no fucking sense to me because, the whole pitch with Joe Biden was forget about policy, forget about who would make the best president. He's great with independents, so just swallow and go with Joe. And then you have an independent voter who has the most popular podcast. He said that he would probably vote for Bernie Sanders, but that he didn't think that Joe Biden was suitable to be president. Do you want to win over swing voters or not? Because this guy, I don't think he's going to be able to win over swing voters.
There were 3 million people that were deported and separated from their families. Yeah. We had this classification of families.
You should vote for Trump.
Families
You should vote for Trump.
The fact that Bernie Sanders can win over people who are not ideologically pure, who are not all the way to the far, far left, he can win over people who would otherwise vote for Donald Trump. That should mean that he's the most electable candidate. But no, apparently it means that he has to apologize for the fact that there's a percentage of his voters who might end up voting for Donald Trump in the general election. Alyssa Milano, she's been tweeting a lot. She talks about how Bernie Sanders supporters are super toxic and that we need to unify the party. But then she also insults the people who are excited about the other candidate. So I don't understand how this whole unifying thing's gonna work. If you're gonna smear Bernie Sanders by smearing us like that, it's just like the whole basket of deplorables thing, or 47% of the population, or New York values. That's not how you win an election. You don't win an election by smearing other people's supporters. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, yeah, she goes on about how toxic Bernie bros are, but she has nothing to say about how her own preferred candidate is super toxic.
Look, here's the deal.
I mean, not just mean Twitter followers, but he's actually toxic to people in real life.
We got to stop building and replacing pipelines.
You gotta go vote for somebody else.
All right, thanks so much, sir. We're going to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to vote you in the general if you treat me
I
right.
know. Well, no.
Oh yeah, and somebody accused him of sexual assault, and she had absolutely nothing to say about that. She was mysteriously silent about that, but there was no moment of silence whatsoever with Brett Kavanaugh. She was very outspoken about how we should believe women when it came to a Republican being accused of something, but when it's a Democrat.
I endorsed Joe Biden.
Okay, good.
And there have been accusations against Joe about a sexual assault.
Right, and people were
And
saying, how
so-
can you do that? Because
So
you're...
I have not publicly said anything about this
Okay.
because I believe that even though we should believe women, but that does not mean at the expense of not giving men their due process and
I like
investigating
that.
situations.
I like that.
I did do my due diligence because part
Yep.
of it was the article that sort of stood out to me was that Time's Up decided not to take the case.
Uh-huh.
And so,
that was
I did my
important to you. That
I did
meant, well, maybe there's more to this story here.
Right. I did my work and I spoke to Time's Up, and I just don't feel comfortable throwing away a decent man that I've known for 15 years.
Yep.
Because I'm staying quiet about it.
You were
Bernie
getting dragged
supporters-
on Twitter by Bernie Bros.
Right.
So the problem wasn't with due process is bad or whatever. The issue is that her standards are completely different when Joe Biden's being accused. I think that a lot of people who are calling her a hypocrite are not against the concept of due process, against the concept of innocent until proven guilty. And to me, it's not about, oh, you should just believe the accuser, no questions asked. It's less about believing them and more about treating them with compassion and respect and taking their accusations seriously and wanting to seriously investigate. Oftentimes an accuser comes forward and people just have this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, she's lying. What are her real motives? People like dig into her backstory and they look for any flaw, whether it's her sexual history or whatever, and they look for any flaw, and that flaw is the reason why she's not credible. The accuser on trial more than the accused. I don't believe okay, we have to believe her, no questions asked, but I definitely don't like it when the questions that are asked are like, why were you there? Why didn't you come forward sooner? Although, why didn't you come forward sooner? It's a legit question, but it's not something that disqualifies an accusation. Tara Reid said that she didn't come forward sooner, in part, because he's a very powerful man and she's just a civilian, but also she didn't have a framework to understand what had happened to her. And that makes a lot of sense because when we think about rape and sexual assault, I think a lot of people, they picture it happen like you are a young, defenseless woman. You're just outside in the middle of the night. You decide to walk past some shady alleyway and some evil, scary creep just jumped you and attacked you and raped you. And that's how it happens. And I'm sure that there are some people, it does happen to them in that way. But more often than not, if you do get raped or abused, sexually assaulted, perpetrator is usually somebody that you know that you had a relationship with. And it can be hard to reconcile that what happened to you counts as sexual assault or rape when the perpetrator, they don't line up with what the perpetrator in your mind would be like, A lot of us, we have this picture of rape and sexual assault and abuse and all of that. And then when we experience that in real life, it doesn't line up with this narrative that we have been given. So it's hard to come forward ASAP. I got off on a little bit of a tangent. Again, she's still posting about how toxic Bernie bros are. She's very quick to dismiss other people based off of their support of Bernie Sanders. She expects that people will just show up in the general election after all of this. Like Joe Biden thinks that it's fine for people to go out and vote in the middle of a pandemic, while Bernie Sanders said that we should put it off.
I think, look, there's nobody in the world that wants progressive policy to be set in place more than I do. But this primary to me is not about policy. It's about beating Trump. Period. That's it. End of story. We need to nominate someone that is going to beat Trump and bring honesty and integrity and dignity and truth back to the United States of America.
I'd argue that people who want progressive policies more than her are the people who, their lives depend on getting progressive policies in place right now, not at some point in the future, eventually. They need those progressive policies now. And that's why they're very passionate. But then that passion is just read as being toxic and awful.